the Deputy National Chairman, IPAC, the Chairman of the political parties present here, members of the council who are present here, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me a great pleasure and a special privilege to address you this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. IPAC, in its first election observation mission outside Nigeria, traveled to Liberia to witness firsthand how elections are conducted by other African countries, especially those in the sub-Saharan region, in order to learn, compare, and contrast the experiences between what obtains in Nigeria and those countries. What lessons, if any, IPAC could learn from the exercise in those countries. The trip by IPAC to Liberia was facilitated by Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, the chairman, Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, following a request by IPAC for opportunities to learn from the experiences of other countries with a view to improve our processes of conducting elections in Nigeria. The IPAC Elections Observation Mission, comprising of the underlisted party leaders, left Nigeria for Monrovia on Saturday, 7th October 2023, and returned to Nigeria on Wednesday, the 11th October 2023, after a successful Accord Party, stayed here. We also have, stand up please. We also have Chief Ralph Okenwosu, the National Chairman, African Democratic Congress, ADC. We also have Ajia Zainab A. Ibrahim, Deputy National Women Leader, All Progressives Party, that is APC. The four of us were the delegation that went to Liberia. The EOM, that is Election Observer Mission, delegation arrived in Monrovia late evening Saturday, 7th October 2023. We were lodged at a hotel in the center of the city, Monrovia. The following day, delegation had a highly informative interaction session with NEC chairperson, Madam Davideta Brown Lansana, and the commissioner in charge of political parties. They took time to brief us on their level of preparedness and responded convincingly to our concerns. We were later accredited with the official tags of the Commission as international observers to the election. There was also an attempt to facilitate our contacts with the party officials, but it wasn't successful because most of them were very busy preparing for the elections at that point in time. On the same day, that was on the 8th, we visited the situation room mounted by the eminent women of Africa at their office. We were amazed by the marvelous work the group led by eminent women were doing to keep peace and make the whole process of the election a memorable event. They have a situation room in place many weeks before the election in order to track activities on campaigns and trouble spots. They have a well-equipped call center where calls on complaints from any part of the country are responded to 24/7. They have police, immigration, and other security officials stationed in their office so that if anything happens, they can deploy any of these people to go and intervene. On the day before the general election, in collaboration with other groups, they organized peace rallies across the country. On the election day, they tracked everything from the proceedings of the elections themselves, how the polls were tallied, how they counted and everything, So from their situation room, it's a highly equipped, facility that they have there. We took time to emphasize the admirable role of the eminent women, that situation room, because one of our key observations is the candor and discipline displayed by the citizens. We're talking about these women, in spite of the election frenzy. The situation room was set up long before the election day, and this contributed in building confidence and creating a peaceful atmosphere for the election. Talking about peace and lack of the kind of tension and violence that are often associated with politics and elections in most African and emerging democracies, we observe that the citizenry were very much enlightened on keeping peace, reason, and need to vote and on issue at play. Enlightenment wasn't just about voters' education, but awareness of environment, action, inactions, and rule of law. This is worthy of emulation by us. To press this further, we had a meeting at the Nigerian House in Monrovia with our embassy officials. After an extensive, well-coordinated briefing by Charge d'Affaires, we asked him, in case there's any problem, what do we do? And he gave us a number which can be reached at any time so that they can intervene. But he assured us that they are not expecting any problem. The few rallies we attended were peaceful. Party men and women were excited with their party affairs, excited members and party supporters of uniforms, T-shirts, and different attires and caps branded in party or candidates' slogan names, but no thugs. On the election day, the polling stations that we visited were at different ends and center of Monrovia, the state capital. Each polling station had an average of 7 polling units. As early as 8:30 a.m., when we arrived, the first one, the turnout was huge. And the polling units officers and party agents were all present. The same thing with the 9 polling stations we observed. Even under the sun and in two cases, rain, people stood on the queue waiting for their turn. The list of voters and their pictures were displayed on the walls of the area where the stations were located. Also, the pictures of each contestant and his or her name were on the ballot papers, unlike in Nigeria. While this looks good, considering the sheer number of contestants and ever-changing list of candidates due to court orders, this may not be an option for our country for now. All the polling units were indoors, mostly in school compounds. All the party agents were well seated, so were the electoral officers too. The polling station had one law enforcement, but a few we visited had none. No security man, in sight in some of the polling units. So that goes to tell you how peaceful the election really was. And no one tried to do anything funny to disrupt the process. Because of the large turnout and the slow manual accreditation process, most polling stations opened into the night. On the D-Day, Liberians really, voted. This is the fourth consecutive election since the end of the Civil War 20 years ago. The Civil War that ended in 2003. So there were 2 main contestants. That is the sitting president, George Weah, of CDC, I think he is, and Joseph Bohai of the Unity Party. There were other candidates, about 22 or so of them for the presidency. The October 10 elections availed voters the opportunity to elect a president, 15 senators, and 73 members of the House of Representatives. Of the country's 5.4 million population, 2.4 million voters were certified by NEC, that is their own INEC, and the final registration roll to vote in 5,890 polling units. Like in this country we have about 168,000 polling units, so they have only less than 6,000 polling units there. There were 31 political parties who nominated 1,128 candidates for different offices, while 195 independent candidates contested in several polls. The 2023 election was an election of many firsts. It is the country's first reliance on a biometric register for general elections following a national census. In 2022, the NEC transitioned from manual registration to biometric voter registration, that's BVR, to enhance the quality of the voter register. Additionally, it's the first general election to be organized with minimal support from external stakeholders. For instance, the election was secured by Liberia security agencies following the exit of the UN in March 2018. That's the peacekeeping mission of UN. General elections were held in Liberia on 10th October 2023 to elect the president, House of Representatives, and half the Senate, that is half the Senate. Incumbent George Weah was eligible for second term due to the reason that the major candidates did not receive a majority in the first round. So there is now a runoff, which is planned for 7th November 2023, because the two major contestants were not able to receive the majority in the first round. The result of the election, as the last time we checked it, is that George Weah scored 803,674, which represent about 43.84%, while the opponent scored 796,313, representing 43.44%. So you can see it's a very, very close neck and neck kind of race. For 3.8 and for 3.4, it's a very close results. Well, as far as electoral the technology is concerned, I think we are more technologically advanced, in Nigeria here, because we have beavers, which we use to accredit, voters. But there, they do it manually. The counting is done manually, collation is done manually. The only thing done by technology is the biometrics that they have. So to that extent, I think we are far, far ahead of that country. I think another lesson that we learned is that patriotism, and national purpose is important, that we should try to cultivate in our citizens, because that's what we saw as one thing that was responsible for the law and order, the orderly manner by which, that election was conducted. And we didn't see the sign of use of money. Like I said, there was no violence, no intimidation by law enforcement agencies, because there was none in some polling units, and the elections were orderly even at that. So perhaps I think we have something to learn from there. Like there was an impressive turnout, which was driven by a sense of patriotism and citizen commitment to the national purpose. And we saw that youth were more in number, in fact, about, I think, more than, you could even say, close to 85%, if not 90%. 90% of people that were there were all youth, and more women also, So even at the registration, they have more women, isn't it, registered, than men, about 50-something, isn't it? Yeah. So it shows that in Africa, the disadvantaged age, or category of people are working up to their responsibility to stand up and fight for themselves. That's what we witnessed there. Well, I think the trip was quite interesting, and we learned that it pays to be committed and to be a patriot. That is to love your nation, because it does a lot, So that's, I think, is our observation. Again, when we landed here, we saw some reports, on the elections, which tend to paint the whole picture as something that is bleak, we don't think what was painted by some national newspapers as far as the elections was concerned, where they said that about 94% of the election is being contested, in the courts. And they now say that it is an indication, or it's a sign of failure of INEC. We rather say no, it's the failure of National Assembly. And I'll tell you why. The National Assembly is responsible for the Electoral Act which we are using. INEC cannot but work with the Electoral Act given to them. We political parties cannot but work with the Electoral Act, what the Electoral Act says. So it's not the failure of politicians or INEC. It's the failure of our representatives in the National Assembly. Because when you look at even what happened, it's because there's so much ambiguity in that Electoral Act, which led to, from the primaries, we had a lot of problems from the primaries, and that's why, and most of the cases were pre-election cases, the primaries, because we ourselves, the politicians, the political parties, were grappling, we were, back and forth with INEC on some of the provisions. So what we should look at as the people of this country, the citizens, is to see how do we get National Assembly to do things that will be in the best interest of this country. That Electoral Act does not reflect what this country really deserves, in terms of having an election that will be credible and reliable. So we can do, the press can do better by beaming their searchlight on the National Assembly. You can remember what we had to, how much we have to do before we get them to even put in that Electoral Act the transmission of the results from the polling units, And even when they put it there, they took it away again. So our eyes should be open. We shouldn't be chasing shadow, living substance. The substance of this case, as far as our election process is concerned, is the law, which is the grand norm here. And the National Assembly are the people who are supposed to give us the law that is very clear, to everybody. Because most of those cases they are talking about came as a result of the primaries, And it wasn't that politicians didn't want to do it right. We just didn't know what to do. Some of them, there are a lot of confusion in that Electoral Act. So we should revisit the Electoral Act. They shouldn't blame the INEC or blame us, the politicians. We should blame the National Assembly. And if at all anybody should blame again, I think it's Judiciary, because they should have looked at these things beyond, in a manner that will give the country a very sound, democracy, to sit on, because these two institutions are key to democracy. That's why I'm talking about it here. I saw what happened in Liberia. I saw people that are committed to their nation. And here you have people elected are serving only their own interest. You can say they are politicians, yes, but once we have elected them, they are no longer under our control anymore. So it's you guys that can really get them to do what they're supposed to do in the interest of this country. It's not INEC, it is not the politicians. It is the law. We can't do anything outside the law. This is a constitutional democracy that we are operating in this country. Everything must go by the law. The law given to us is so obscured. So INEC is a victim. We are also victims as political parties. And what our interests, uppermost in our list of priority, why were we there, is to see how are the political parties keyed into the issue of preparation, conduct of elections, and things like that. And for us to also see the law that governs the elections in that, how is it obeyed? And what are the reasons why people comply with the laws or conduct themselves in a manner that will give you, a true reflection of people's votes, that is votes, counting. And we also, I think those are the reasons why we're there, to interact with the umpire there, interact with political parties, observe how political parties are keyed into the process. What influence do they really have, and what is their role? How do they manage situations there? That's what we went to find out. Yes, we were interested in the candidates too. How many political parties do they have? How do they go about managing the political parties, in such a climate? Because, but like you said, definitely in future, we would like to see how we can expand the time, so that we will have a full picture of what transpired in the election. But we were satisfied with the interaction that we had, really, we were able to see rallies, how people conduct themselves in rallies. We were so amazed, the kind of, orderliness. And the number of people, it got to the extent that we couldn't even move with our cars. We had to abandon the cars and ride this Okada and what have you to get to our hotel, And the frenzy was there, but it didn't degenerate into any fighting or something like that. So we wanted to have such experience, so that here we can learn a few things from there. But yes, time was not enough, but at least we got what we wanted.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Matthew Dennis. I report for News Direct newspaper. So, sir, from what?
Educated questions. The INEC there, the difference between the INEC here and there isn't much, because what am I saying? The INEC there, or the NEC there, was put in place by the government, just like what you have here. The commission operatives here are appointed by the government. The same thing you have there. But perhaps because of the national because of patriotism of the citizens, maybe it doesn't really come out in as it comes out here in our own case. As you can see from the results, the party in power received just a little above, the opposition. 44 point something percent. The difference is just 0.4%, about 3,000 or less than that between the votes. So which means the empire didn't interfere with what was happening. So the level of patriotism, and that has to do with the individual. So it's us, the people, that we must change our orientation. We must believe in the country, over and above money and other, ephemeral things that are not really important. So I think that's what I can only see, because they are all in the same kind of arrangement as far as the law is concerned, or how they are organized or put in place. The other thing is the issue of these primordial sentiments that interferes with our politics here. Well, I didn't see one. Perhaps the reason is that, you see, Liberia, if you look at their origin, they are more or less all from the same origin. Because if you look at the slaves who were brought from America, from USA, so they tend to have the same kind of roots, the same kind of, sentiments, things, some kind of homogeneity, I think is in there, unlike our own. So I think that's why they don't think too much about where is this one from, where is that. No. And you could see that, like I said, George Weah, nobody talked about, in fact, even his own village where he came from, I understand he didn't receive much votes there. So this sentiment does not affect them, the way it does here. The last question was, why am I saying we shouldn't be blamed? You see, we should not be blamed because, if you have not forgotten, all of us, the, what do you call them, the civil society groups, political parties, ordinary citizens. Everybody was at the, we were talking to National Assembly, telling them that we need automatic transmission of results from the polling units. Okay? Everybody thought that what we asked for was what we were given end of the day. But it turned out that it's not what we asked for. The digitalization of the process, which was allowed by the National Assembly, it's only at the polling unit and only at the accreditation of the voters. That's where all these digitalization things stopped. But that's not what the Nigerians were asking for. The Nigerians were asking for automatic transmission of the results and the collation. Nobody was told that manual process is still there, that even if I've voted, I've gone away, if they go to the next stage of the collation, it's going to be done manually as it has been done before. So nothing has really changed if you look at the situation. And that is not what the Nigerians got. That's not what the National Assembly told us. They said they have given you automatic transmission of results and that's it. So what I'm saying is that the Nigerians should look in the direction, the right direction. The right direction is National Assembly. Next time we are amending that law, our eyes will be opened, to really understand what the implications of this act really is. Today, everybody knows that it's so obscured and it's not really intended to give us peace in this country or a peaceful election. So that's why when you are saying you are blaming INEC, blaming political parties, please, be wiser. Let's look at where the problem is coming from so that we put them on their toes.
Sorry, just a question.
Go ahead, sir.
It's good that you observe.
Yeah, like I've said, we're operating a constitutional democracy. No matter what you do, you have to go back to the grand norm. But I'm not telling you the grand truth. It's not only the grand norm that matters, the grand truth. So it also matters. What is the grand truth? The grand truth is the fact that we have to be committed to building this nation. And how do you get it done? Is by embarking on an awareness campaign. Let Nigerians understand what is happening. Let them know that the laws being made for them is the right laws that are coming out. Because regardless of what you accuse people of, that they are using money, they are intimidating people, end of the day, what does the law say? And to our chagrin, we discovered that the law given to us, at best, can be described as a kind of dummy. So that's why I'm saying to the law, yes, our own responsibility is how we embark on more political awareness of our members, that it pays to be committed to this country. Let us be committed to our country, because without it we can get nowhere. But the laws are very important. So you have the grand norm and you have the grand truth. Yeah.
At this point, gentlemen of the press, we thank you for coming and calling for out.
Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you, sir. Well, okay, sir.